This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. Shelby Harris is one of the players on the Browns that I find to be underrated. And it's easy to see how people could underrate Shelby Harris in a world where people will put so much value into sack numbers, and that world's changing slowly but surely, but people still tend to put a ton of value on sack numbers. Shelby Harris's sack numbers from last year aren't going to wow you. They might even concern you, considering that he played in almost every game last season, started in 7. He had 1.5 sacks. And if you're somebody who has a more basic approach to this, that might be something where you look at and say, oh, well, I guess he sucked, right? You add that with this age, and it's not easy for somebody to do some napkin math and kind of write off Shelby Harris. But when I am doing my rewatch of the 2023 season, there have been two people who I have noticed more than anybody else in that role player realm. And it's Shelby Harris and Obo Okoronkwo. And we'll get to Obo Okoronkwo when he comes up in these rankings. But Shelby Harris, just the impact on the games that he has is much, much, much larger than what those 1.5 sacks will tell you. Because if you just look a tad deeper on Shelby Harris's numbers, you'll start to see where he has been impressive. Let's talk about pass deflections, right? Shelby Harris is number 3 in the NFL, or tied for number 3 in the NFL in pass deflections last year with 5 of them. Now, it's interesting what stats on the defensive line we tend to give value to. We give value to a sack or a pressure because best case scenario, you move the ball back and you stop a play from happening. Worst case scenario, with the pressure, you stop a play from happening or force a throw out of bounds. Either way, you make it impossible for a team to move forward the football against you, right? That's the basic way that we boil this down to. Interestingly enough, with that logic being why we value sacks, being why we value pressures, being why we spend countless hours arguing about pressures versus sacks, it's interesting to me that pass deflections aren't seen as a stat very similar to that. A pass deflection stops a play from happening. It's an intentional play that needs to be made, and Shelby Harris had 5 of them. To me, that's equal to having a sack. It's the same kind of value as having a sack, because if he blocks a pass on second down, now it's 3rd and 10 or 3rd and whatever the down and distance was. It's a very huge, very impactful play. It doesn't hit us in the emotional area as much, which is why I don't think we value it as much as just like fans. But if we sit down and think about like the actual value that pass deflections bring to a game, getting 5 of them is pretty similar to getting 5 sacks. You also add in the 6 tackles for losses that Shelby Harris had, and now you're not looking at a player who just had 1.5 sacks. You're looking at a guy who produced on the same level as somebody who would have had like 10 sacks from the interior defensive line position. On top of that, if you dig even deeper, he had 19 tackles, which may not sound super impressive, but the actual number you want to look for to pair with a tackle stat, right? Because tackles by themselves aren't that impressive of a stat. Somebody has to get a tackle on almost every play. It makes sense that somebody's going to accumulate a lot of them. The number you want to pair up with tackles, especially when it comes to run defense, is average depth of tackle. Shelby Harris was number 3 in the league at average depth of tackle. So 19 tackles with an average depth of 0.5 yards, which is impressive. If we look at his PRP, and for those of you who don't know what PRP, it's a formula from Pro Football Focus that combines sacks, hits, hurries, and it's relative to how many times they rush the passer. Basically, it's a stat that evaluates how many times a player stopped a play from happening or constituted in a failure. It's similar to a stop stat, but it's more tailored towards those who play on the defensive line. And he was 19th in the NFL at PRP with a PRP of 10. There are players who got 10 sacks from the interior defensive line last year that weren't as effective as Shelby Harris was last season. He was pretty good for this team, especially when you consider that Shelby Harris was brought on the team super late in the process, right? Was a last minute signing at the beginning of camp and somebody who had to be worked into shape during the preseason. Now he is going to be in his second year in the Jim Schwartz system. Now he gets to build on top of the chemistry that he built last year with some of these guys. And I think he's going to be even better this year. Yes, he's in his 30s, but he's in his early 30s. I still think there's a lot of room for guys like him to be productive. And the thing that Shelby Harris brings to the table is a skill set that I don't expect him to age out of anytime soon. If you look at the other guys who are really good at that, they were able to do pass deflections for a very long time. Calais Campbell, JJ Watt, Shelby Harris is probably similar to that. He understands pass windows, he understands angles and timing, and he just has a knack for getting his hands up at the right time. It's just something that's instinctive about him that he's very good at, and I think he'll continue to be good at it. He's been good at it literally almost every year of his NFL career. I'd be surprised if that stopped anytime soon. So that's what Shelby Harris did last year, and that's why I have Shelby Harris ranked highly. Now let's talk about what this means for Shelby Harris in 2024. I know a lot of people have Quentin Richardson pegged to start. I know a lot of people think it's going to be Maurice Hurst. I think Shelby Harris is going to start, and it's not necessarily because he is the better pass rusher or the better at one thing. Well, he is better at one thing than almost everybody on that defensive line, and that's pass deflections. But it's mainly because he has the most balanced skill set at defensive tackle, and I think that makes him a perfect fit to play more snaps, starter snaps for this team. Now, starter snaps for the defensive line is going to be a hard thing to gauge because they're going to rotate those guys out rather frequently. But the reason I think Shelby Harris will get a little bit more snaps is because if you look at this defensive line, you have Maurice Hurst, who is a heat-seeking missile as a pass rusher. You have Michael Hall, who you expect to be a pass rusher, especially early in his NFL career. Dalvin Tomlinson's going to anchor the other side. Quentin Jefferson is here for pass rushing reasons. So Shelby Harris would be a good guy to have in there and balance down situations where it could be runner pass. He's your most balanced defensive tackle outside of Dalvin Tomlinson that you can throw out there. And he's versatile enough to be useful in rundowns and passing situations, as he's not going to be a sack guy. He's not going to be clogging up the lane, but he will hang behind and he will get pass deflections. He will get TFLs. He will tackle guys pretty shortly along the line of scrimmage, and he will be very useful for this team going forward. With the team as athletic as the Cleveland Browns are, as aggressive as the Cleveland Browns are, you need to balance that aggression with guys who have play styles that don't rely on that aggression, right? Because for every 3 guys that are going to run with their hair on fire down the field at the quarterback, you need at least 2 people who are going to wait and see what the chaos produces to make sure Pat Mahomes doesn't slip out of there and find a crease and runs for 35 yards, or to make sure that Lamar Jackson doesn't get to find a big play downfield because you rushed him a little bit too early, right? You have to find ways to balance your aggression, especially in the NFL. And I think this is putting Shelby Harris out there is one of them. And just what a great find Shelby Harris is to have, like somebody who could produce at that level still, be that effective still for an NFL team. And he's one of like 3 different guys that you want to rotate in and out, 4 different guys that you want to rotate in and out. And it's a good thing for this team that Shelby Harris is on this list. Mo Hurst is on this list. Like, we have so many defensive tackles on this top 25 list. And again, as somebody who has sat here and cried and yelled for this team to add defensive tackles for like 5 years, it's nice to see the defensive tackle room be at this point. And who knows what Mike Hall is going to bring to the table this year. And that's also another element where Shelby Harris is probably going to be very valuable, is his mentorship ability, right? He's a veteran player. He has played at a very high level. He's been one of the better defensive tackles in all the football. He's just another great veteran to have around in that locker room to keep the vibes going the way you want them to go. But that's it for Shelby Harris. That's why I have him ranked number 22. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.